Merry Christmas, everyone. I felt, I've been a little under the weather this season in addition to being, having in recovery from a bicycle accident 2 months ago. It was fairly serious, and I just felt like coming into this beautiful, softly lit church, and I couldn't quite sing all the verses to all the hymns, but I just felt like they kind of scooped me up and carried me and held me as you all sang them so beautifully. And I wish that for you this Christmas. I know Christmas can be such a frantic, hectic time for a lot of us, but I hope that you can be held by what Christmas is, because that's ultimately the gift of Christmas. It's not about what we do or create or offer or bring, but it's about the gift that's been given us and finding some time to rest in that. So I'll give you my favorite public service announcement for Christmas. I make it every year, so some of you have heard it before. Christmas lasts for how many days? 12 days. Okay, I was a little rough on that. Okay, how long is Christmas? A very popular hymn, the 12 days of Christmas. Okay, this is the really tricky part. When do the 12 days of Christmas start? Tomorrow. Ted heard it this morning. The 12 days of Christmas start on the 25th, and they last until January 5th, until the Feast of the Epiphany and the next day on January 6th. So you have all of this time. If you thought, gosh, I didn't rest in Christmas yet, you have so much time to rest in Christmas. And that's what I love about the 12 days of Christmas. It's just a chance for us to, once the busyness of the packages and the parties and the meals and all the things are over, to just receive that precious gift. This afternoon we had our annual Christmas pageant, which I like to call Holy Chaos. And you never know what's going to happen, but I've come to expect something. Something will happen where the Holy Spirit, the message of Christmas, will just spark, it'll just shine through. And this year, for the first year in my 7 years here at Grace, we had a real baby, just a 4 or 5 month old baby as our baby Jesus. And he did so well, he just basically slept through the whole thing. The 5th grade Mary scooped him up in her arms, and she took him over, and I thought, oh dear, don't set him down in the hard wooden, manger prop like he's gonna wake up and start crying. But no, she laid him right here in the manger, and he just kept sleeping. And then he stayed there for the whole rest of the pageant. And, one by one, as the different characters, the different pageant people, the children were dressed up as angels and shepherds and the wise men and all the things. And one by one, the animals even, they just came and they dropped on their knees here before the little baby Jesus, just like filings to a magnet. It was so beautiful. And by the end, they were kind of in this perfect little circle, just all staring at this beautiful, sleeping young child. It's a gift to be held in Christmas, to let Christmas find you and catch you up in its arms. I'd planned to talk this evening about kind of some of the Christmas backstory. I feel like the beautiful passage from Luke that I just read, almost a lot of us could almost recite a lot of it off by memory, right? It's kind of deep in us, but there's so much more to the Christmas narrative, to the stories. And this morning, it was a kind of a funny Advent this year, because this morning we had the 4th Sunday of Advent. So normally Advent lasts a little bit longer than 3 weeks. This year was 3 weeks long. It was kind of rapid. Mary's just heard the story. We heard the story of the Annunciation of the angel Gabriel to Mary, telling her that she's going to become pregnant and bear a son. So a friend of mine who does a sermon podcast said that's the world's fastest pregnancy. She's pregnant in the morning, and by the nighttime she's giving birth. It felt like that this Advent was the world's fastest Advent. But we took that fast Advent, and we took that story of the Annunciation, and we took the question that Mary asks the angel Gabriel, and we put it on all of our posters and our signs and things like that, so you may have seen it around. We made it our theme for this Advent and Christmas time. And that question was, how can this be? How can this be? The angel gives her the most astounding news that she will become the mother of the Messiah. And she has just one question. Well, how can this be, since I'm a virgin? Right? A logistical question, yes, right? But maybe more than that as well. I think Mary is probably wondering how she's going to survive because she may have seen in her short life already unwed pregnant women who in her culture could have been stoned to death, right, for their condition. How can this be? How's this going to work out, right? I can't see the way from here to there. We did a Bible study reflection in a little mini Advent retreat a couple of weeks ago on this passage, and a couple of us were struck by that question, how can this be? And we took it to mean, well, sort of like, why me? And somebody said, well, maybe the angel Gabriel went to a lot of people. You know, that greetings favored one. We tend to think of Mary as so special that God chose her, and that's true, but maybe all of us are chosen. Maybe all of us are that favored by God. Maybe the angel went to like 17 virgins and they all screamed and ran away. And Mary was just the one that said yes. Mary was the one that received the message and asked a good question and pondered these things in her heart. We hear that again in the reading from Luke that we just heard. I love how Mary ponders these things in her heart. I think we could all use, I know I could use with more pondering time. And that's a good pondering question. How can this be? Right? Because you can hear it echoing now on a lot of different levels, not just logistical or how do we get from here to there? How am I going to be safe and bring this child into this world? Why me? But we look around our world today as Mary must have then in a small outpost, oppressed people of the Roman Empire, right? Oppression and violence, just like what we see today. Well, a little bit different technology. Pretty bad still. And she must have looked around her and she must have said, God, how can this be? Right? Just like we do. How can it be that in the Holy Land this year there will be no Christmas services because they're at war? And it's quite possible that the Christians will all be wiped out, caught in the crossfire. How can that be? How can it be that children die, that family members disappear, that our earth is brought to the very brink and species to the very brink of existence? How can these things be? And we can look at our own lives and often ask those same questions, whether they're in dire circumstances like illness or injury after injury, relationships that fall apart despite our best efforts, or the times that we just feel stuck, the times that things just don't seem to come together for us and work. When we say, God, I thought you had a plan here. I thought we were in this together. How can it be that I'm here in my life now? And as we were in this Bible study discussion, I just had an image of God coming to us, just coming down, and you've seen somebody just kind of sitting on the curb, dejected. Maybe you've been that person or that kid after school, just sitting on the curb, head in your hands, elbows on your knees. And I just had this image of God and Jesus coming down and sitting on the curb next to us, just sitting there, maybe kind of adopting the same posture, but just being present with us, humanity, down on the curb. Not coming in and saying, all right, I got this, we're going to fix it all up, got a 10-point plan. No, God is not a fixer God. We have a joiner God. God doesn't come and fix it and make it all better. God joins us in our mess. And that is the point of the incarnation, the enfleshment of God. Emmanuel, God with us. And we wish that God would make things right. And we, like Mary, long for the day when the world will be turned upside down. When, like I heard the words from the prophet Isaiah that Susan read, and I had a catch in my throat, because think of those words written so many thousands of years ago about the land of Israel, about the boots of the trampling warriors and the garments rolled in blood just being burned in the fire because they're not needed anymore. And yet today they still are being used. So how do we stand with one foot in this hope, in this longing, this understanding of the way that God wants the world to be, and one foot still in the way the world is? How can this be? How can it be? A theologian said that it doesn't actually matter that Jesus was born 2,000 years ago. It doesn't make any difference at all unless he's also born in us. You see, we are the people, all of us, and many, many more. I believe all of God's people are the people who God has called and chosen, like Mary, to bring God into this world. We tend to think it'll be governments. We tend to think it'll be maybe large nonprofits or celebrities, people with a really big social media following, who are going to make a difference. That's what we think, right? But if you look at the stories, if you spend some time in the first couple of chapters of the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, you got 12 days to do it, guys. Right? This is my Christmas homework every year. There are so many wonderful stories there. And what we hear is that the big news of the Messiah didn't come to the palace in Jerusalem. It didn't come to King Herod. It didn't come to Emperor Augustus. It came to some shepherds in a backwater field outside of Bethlehem. We're kind of used to that idea, but you have to really kind of put it in perspective and process it, you know. The most backwater, out-of-the-way place that you can think of. The most unlikely set of characters. The most marginal, poor, quiet, impoverished place. And after all that, they still had to run away from there because King Herod was after them. Jesus and his family become refugees. And so if God chose this, when God wanted to come to the world, God could have come any way God wanted to. This is what God chose. The least, the most marginal, the least significant, right? The out of the way. Then it becomes a little bit harder for any of us to say, whoa, I can't make a difference, right? God is waiting to be born again. This Christmas, this year, this new year. And God is waiting to be born in each of us. There's no other way that it's going to happen. Will we, like Mary, say yes to God?